Hey guys, Zomfox here, and it is time for the Week 2 Game Picks video. Yes, this past week we've talked about in the last couple videos was insane. From having not one but two utter curb stomps of games, to having two really close games with one of them not really feeling close but being it was a wild one. And that reflects on the odds for this week and all that. Some of these teams have just insane odds, whether it be the spread or in most cases the over-under being still really low. This is going to be a really tough week to do it. Now, like I said, if you end up gambling, make sure you do it responsibly. These are not my betting picks. These are just my actual picks for these games. I'm not betting on all this stuff. But without further ado, let's get started with the odds for the first pair of games. The Stallions Panthers and the Showboats Defenders. Now, I know we're not there yet, but you see that +8, -8, that 8-point spread for the Showboats DC game? Yeah, there are 3 games with a +7 or a 7-point or bigger spread. That's insane. So, let's just talk about the one that's close. The Stallions Panthers. The Stallions Panthers game is a 2.5-point spread. The Stallions are still favorites despite number 1 looking really bad against DC and number 2 playing in Ford Field. Now, the benefits for the Stallions is this is on a Friday, so the attendance will probably suffer a little bit from it being on a Friday. Historically, weekday games always do a bit worse than the weekend games for spring football. And of course, the defense still did its job against DC. Now, some people would argue that DC's offense just isn't that good. Some would argue that Stallions or the Birmingham Stallions defense was just really good. The answer is somewhere in the middle, obviously. That part of the ball did play pretty well, all things considered. Again, DC only had a couple of really big chunk plays that will rely on Matt McCrane, but the offense looked pitiful. Look, it's not even just the one part of the, equation. It's not just the O-line, not just the quarterback. Both Magoo and the O-line played terribly in that game. It was just really bad. Now, this is a tough one. The over-under 38.5 this is a tough one, but I'm going to go with the Panthers winning this 24-20. This is going to be another close game. These games are usually close between these two teams, not always, but the last couple especially have been close. Again, yes, I know the playoff games final score is pretty lopsided, but that wasn't until late in the third quarter when that really got out of hand. Usually these games are close, and I think Michigan wants to win. They want to start 2-0. I think they get a W here. They need to prove they can actually beat Birmingham. This is a lot like the Breakers-Stallions rivalry, right? Where it was a rivalry, is what everybody called it, but in reality, Birmingham kept kicking New Orleans' ass. Michigan does not want that to happen to them as well, so they need to get this W now, especially because Birmingham looks weak. If you can force them to start 0-2, you provide a huge sigh of relief, and you give a lot of wiggle room for you becoming that 1 seed in the USFL Conference, especially if Houston and Memphis end up losing this week. If you end up being the only 2-0 team in a division or a conference full of 0-2 teams, yeah, you're almost a guaranteed playoff team at that point. So they need to win this game. Now, I do think it's going to hit the over, but I do think it's going to be somewhat close. Let me put it this way. Vegas knows the over-under. We talked about it last week. You had 2 games for sure, might have been 3, where they either directly hit or within half a point of the over-under. It's just crazy. But this is when I do think the over hits. Now, yes, I know both these defenses should be really good, but I think what ends up happening is Bryce Perkins is the best player on the field, especially in offense. He's going to do a lot for the Panthers. The Stallions had to do a lot of changes. Of course, the Panthers only added a couple guys from their inactive roster to the active roster. Their D-line should be better. So, I think Michigan gets this one. I think they do pull off the W here. I know this is technically an upset. I don't really view this as an upset if they win it, but I think they do win it. I think they are a better team right now. And no, I'm not just saying this because I'm a Panthers fan. I got to just clarify that. Michigan just looked better in week 1. I said it before and I'll say it again. The Panthers-Showboats game between both teams was the best football played. Both teams looked solid. Now, Memphis' offense, not nearly as much, but at times looked really good, really awkward. They had 2 of, if not the 2 best drives in the entire league this week, and then every other drive was terrible. But that was the most complete game by both teams. Whereas Birmingham, their offense looked pitiful, and it's really hard to even say their defense looked great because, again, DC's offense didn't look great either. The only unit from that game I can legitimately say something about is that DC's D-line is heavily improved from last year. But overall, I think Michigan gets the W here. Showboats DC. This, I think, is game of the week. I know a lot of people say Birmingham, Michigan. I think this is the best game of the week. Both of these two teams have the 2 biggest question marks in the entire league. Because you could easily make a case from week 1 that these 2 teams are the most polarizing in the league now. There's a lot of people who think DC is the best team in the league. There's a lot of people who don't even know if they're really a top 4 team. Memphis. Is Memphis legitimately improved enough to be a good team? Are they not? I think they're a playoff team at this point. I think they looked really solid in week 1, all things considered. Ken Wisenhunt is back at head coach. And I think a +8 spread is insane. Like, if there's one of these, it can be called a sucker's bet. But when you see 3 of these, I don't agree with that. Not only do I think Memphis covers, I think they win outright 17-16 in the closest game of the week. I just think Memphis is a better team. That's what it comes down to. I think that what's going to happen is the defenders had their huge week 1 win. Shannon Harris had that moment with Skip Holtz in the post-game press conference, whereas the Showboats, they get their head coach back. Their defense looked significantly improved from last year against the Panthers last week, even though, yes, I know Perkins still diced him up, but Perkins is a much better quarterback than Jordan Ta'amu. No disrespect to Ta'amu, it's just Perkins is an MVP candidate. Ta'amu is a good quarterback. The DC running game wasn't that great. Memphis was able to shut down really good running backs, especially Matt Colburn last week against Michigan. So I think what ends up happening is that they win. I think Memphis does get the W. Yes, I know I say that when they had some tackling problems, especially against Bryce Perkins, but I think the tackling issue, that was like a league-wide issue, right? We saw Houston against St. Louis. We saw San Antonio against Arlington. Tackling was a big issue in week 1 because of week 1, I feel. Overall, though, Memphis did a really solid job against a run game that was better, I would say. I think most people would agree that the Panthers running backs, again, this is saying Smith is not back fully healthy yet. He's only back for 1 game. I tried to make that apparent in every other video I talked about. He looked bad, but it was his first game back in over a year. Got to give him a couple weeks. If after week 3, Abram Smith is still not dealing, then it's cause for concern. But as of now, Panthers running game, and a lot of people would say it's a better running game, especially when you have the quarterback versus quarterback on who's a better rusher. Memphis, I think they get the W here. They can win it, but I think it's an under. I think that both these teams are built more on their defense than their offense, which I know some would say is crazy with DC, but I think that's the truth. I think that this is a defensive battle. I wouldn't be shocked if there's 2 defensive touchdowns, or like when I say defensive touchdowns, I'm not just saying a pick 6 or fumble recovery touchdown. In my opinion, if the defense gets an interception or a fumble within the red zone, like right there in the red zone, and the offense scores, that's a defensive touchdown. I think we can all kind of agree on that. If you get the ball at the 15-yard line, you have to go 15 yards. Defense got you that touchdown. So I think we're going to see like maybe 2 of those. I think overall this is going to be a close one. I wouldn't even be shocked if it ends up being a kicker battle, and the final score is like 15-12, honestly, because these are arguably the 2 best kickers in the league. They're the 2 returning guys, Coughlin and McCrane, both really good kickers. I do think Memphis wins this one, though, 17-16. Now, the Sunday games. I forgot to mention earlier, I am going to be doing a live play-by-play for the Panthers Stallions game later today at 7:45 p.m. EST. And this other game I am doing it is the Houston Roughnecks Arlington Renegades. I'll be going live for that game at 11:45 to also do a live play-by-play for that one. Now again, we see 2 more huge spreads, another above +8, this time +10, -10, and then a 7-point spread with the San Antonio St. Louis game. As for the Houston Arlington game, let me put it this way. Again, I'm not saying when you see 3 out of 4 games having a 5-point spread, you know at least one of them is hitting. I think Arlington covers. They win 28-9. I think this is going to be a better performance by the Roughnecks. And, you know, this is better. They'll put up a little bit more points, put up 3 more points, and they'll hold their team to like a few less points. Houston's just really bad. Like, Houston's such a bad team. Starting Anthony Brown again is a huge question mark. Arlington, I think they're going to continue to do what they do. They're going to win at home again. They want to build up that Arlington crowd again, make it a really strong home field advantage. They're going to win this game. They're going to cover the spread, but it's going to be another under game. This one very, very, very close to being that over. Honestly, if you are betting, my advice to you is stay clear of the over-unders, aside from the Memphis-DC game, in my opinion, unless you really believe in one of these teams putting up a ton of points. And that goes for any game that's not that one. Not the Memphis DC. I really think it's going to be under. These other games are really tough to call because even in a blowout can result in an over because, you know, the end of the game happens, a team scores garbage time points, and the over hit. I think that Arlington wins this one. They don't hit the over, but they do cover. It's going to be so tough to see Houston win. Like, this is one of those games where last year Arlington would lose. Early season game, they should easily win. They blow it, just like they did against Houston last year. But again, they're trying to right the wrongs of last year and the, you know, pre-Luis Perez 2023 season. They need to win this game. They couldn't beat Houston last year in their matchup. They should have won. They're going to beat them here, and they're going to do it by, once again, putting up a statement. The fact that some people don't view them as a number 1 team in the league, or hell, some people don't even have them at number 2 in the league right now, that puts fuel in the fire if you're Arlington, because you know you had the best performance in week one, because you played a team that was viewed as significantly better than Houston and dominated them while not even playing perfect football. Arlington wins this. My call. Now, St. Louis, San Antonio. This is one of those where I think this is a deceiving one. I think this is one that ends up being a pretty close game, and this is entirely because historically they have very close games. The biggest difference was a 10-point difference in the conference championship game last year, which of course really was even more aside from that, touchdown I always talk about, blah, blah, blah. Aside from that one, they're always close games. You had, I believe, a 7-point win for the Battlehawks early last year. You had, a 3-point win for the Battlehawks in 2023, and you had the very close win for the Battlehawks last year before the championship game, which, of course, Brahmas are injured. But I do think St. Louis wins this one as well, 22-18. Again, a 4-point difference, a really close game. Hits the over by 0.5. San Antonio covers. It's hard for me to not see this as a close game just because of who are playing. And this is the game that would have been a San Antonio Brahmas home game, but of course it's being played in St. Louis because of the whole, Final Four stuff going on in San Antonio. So if you're the Brahmas, you're pissed off about that. This is supposed to be your home game. You want to make a statement in St. Louis against the Battlehawks. And even if you don't win, making it close gives you a lot more hope as a fan, because that week one game was just terrible. I don't think Mon's going to play that bad against the Brahmas. I think that was a week one thing. It's not like Anthony Brown looked horrid. Kellen Mond looked bad, but he didn't look like a terrible quarterback. You know what I mean? I think we're going to see that this week. He's going to be, better connected. The running game's going to be better. I think that, they might have been a bit shell-shocked at how improved the Arlington defense was. They know what St. Louis's defense is. These guys have played them before, and McFarland and Lovett have been able to do well against this defense. Again, that's why they won last year against them in the playoffs. So I think they make it a close game, but St. Louis just being the better team win. Manny Wilkins does not play as well as he did in week one because he's playing a better defense, but he still looks improved from last year. Hence why the Battlehawks win 22-18. Now, as for my overall record after week one I'm technically positive, though we did push. Again, as I've said before, when I do these, I'm comparing my game picks to the betting picks as of when I make this. Yes, I know technically speaking, the one push, which was the Memphis-Michigan game, was under, but when I did it, it was a straight 38 points over under, not 38.5. So I'm viewing it as a push. Now, the other ones went 1-3 in the spread, 3-1 in the money line. Again, still a negative overall record in the spread, but we're getting positive momentum in the other two fields. We were perfect on the Renegades Brahmas game. Again, I thought it was going to be a close one, but Arlington did win. The spread was correct. Everything was correct in that one. So we got our first perfect game betting prediction of the season. We were a pick six or garbage time pick six away from getting a perfect team score prediction. I would have gotten the Panthers correct if they didn't do that. Kind of cool. I had to get that pick six, didn't he? And Birmingham put up 11, which is how much I thought DC was going to put up. So we were pretty close in that. Even Memphis was close. We were pretty close to getting some perfect score predictions. Again, last year we only had 3 of them. Maybe we get one this week, but overall records, right? Not looking too great in the spread, but looking really solid on the money line, and even the over-under is pretty good. I mean, going 2-1, 2-1-1 in week one for the spread or the over-under is a pretty big accomplishment, so I'll take that. Again, but overall, this has been ZomFox. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell. Again, if you end up betting, make sure you do it responsibly. Again, I am not telling you what to bet. I'm just putting my game picks and comparing them to the betting picks. That's what I've done all these past 4 years now, which is crazy to think this is the 4th year I'm doing this, honestly. But yeah, so again, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe, hit the bell. I will be going live tonight as well as Sunday early afternoon for the Friday night football game between the Panthers and the Stallions, and the Sunday day game between the Renegades and the Roughnecks. So make sure you're there to check those out. Power rankings video should be coming out on Monday, and week review should be on Tuesday. Wednesdays should be some sort of weekly video. Might be an in-depth review, might be an opinion, something else. And again, Player of the Week awards are back. If you haven't seen that, I did post a YouTube short on the Player of the Week winners. Next week, that'll either come out Wednesday, Thursday, whenever they get announced, I'm going to post them. So be on the lookout for all that. And as always, guys, have a great night.